I think we have an Israeli government that has gone beyond that. It's not even about Hezbollah. They're the masters of taking false pretexts in order to justify their wars against the whole region.
Yeah.
They did it in Gaza. They instrumentalized Hamas. They even instrumentalized the horrors of October the 7th in order to advance a pervert regional scheme that I think wants to get rid of any prospect for peace, any prospect for a two-state solution.
In the last week, much of the focus has been on a different front, though, as Israel aims to strike against Hezbollah in Lebanon. In the last 10 days, Israel has conducted what Watchdog Air Wars has called the most intense aerial campaign that we know of in the last 20 years outside of Gaza. So what comes next? Rami Mortada is Lebanon's ambassador to the UK and joins us in the studio now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just for people who are tuning in this morning, can you give us the current situation on the ground in Lebanon as it stands?
Well, as we speak, Lebanon is under a severe, unrestrained brutality, aggression by Israel. Continuous airstrikes throughout the country, sparing no civilian lives, sparing no medical facilities, sparing no support teams that rush to the bombing site to help. So it's the same toolkit of terror that was used in Gaza that is tragically being used again on Lebanon.
And Israel would say in response to that it's using precision attacks to target weapons, weapons that are built up in built-up areas of Lebanon, and that's what it's aiming for. But I think people will be interested to hear, how would you describe your relationship with Hezbollah? Because, people often ask, is Hezbollah is it a force that you welcome inside Lebanon? I know that you say that these are Lebanese citizens, but how would you explain your relationship with Hezbollah as a group?
Clearly, Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese social fabric. They have their modus operandi that some agree with in Lebanon and some do not.
Do you agree with
But
it?
today, well, I would say that sometimes down the line, we would need to address that in an inclusive Lebanese way. But frankly, in order to do that, we would need to address their grievances. They have grievances. Some are legitimate, some are not. But in order to address their grievances, we need Israelis to give us a serene moment. We need Israelis to curb their continuous occupation, to curb their continuous provocations, their continuous incursions into our airspace. So, on short, I think Israel has been doing everything to make our argument with Hezbollah harder and harder.
But does the Lebanese state agree with Hezbollah's actions? So firing rockets into Israel, for example. Do you agree? Do you support that kind of action?
Well, there is a UN framework that addresses this, and we've said from the early beginning that Hezbollah tried on 8th, wrongly or rightly, tried to stop Israel from committing the crimes it ended up committing in Gaza. Of course, the Lebanese government has said that it does not subscribe to that. We subscribe to the UN Resolution 1701, but the implementation of this resolution needs to be symmetrical. When Israel does daily incursions into our airspace, what do you expect us to tell Hezbollah? So it really needs to be symmetrical in order to de-escalate. But I think we have an Israeli government that has gone beyond that. It's not even about Hezbollah. They're the masters of taking false pretexts in order to justify their wars against the whole region.
Yeah.
They did it in Gaza. They instrumentalized Hamas. They even instrumentalized the horrors of October the 7th in order to advance a pervert regional scheme that I think wants to get rid of any prospect for peace, any prospect for a two-state solution.
And I want to come back to talking about your relationship with Israel and where there could potentially be a solution here. But I just want to deal with this very clearly, this question of control over Hezbollah within Lebanon, because you've just said there that you don't necessarily agree with everything that Hezbollah does. So why does the Lebanese government not step in and curb Hezbollah's actions? Are you actually able to do that? If you wanted to, could you stop them?
Of course we can.
So you don't stop them because you don't want to stop them?
It's not that. They have their modus operandi, which has some autonomy But in order to curb them, we need to address it in a symmetrical way. It needs to come within a symmetrical framework that is provided by the UN Resolution 1701 and that Israel has been
Yeah.
violating for
So
years.
you're not stopping them at
Hezbollah
the
since
moment.
2000.
So you're not stopping them at the moment because you want Israel to know that you are not happy with what's going on in the region. You are not stopping them. You are allowing them to continue to take this action.
The only way to stop them is through a diplomatic solution, which is provided by this Resolution 1701. It doesn't help to just single out Hezbollah without looking on the other side. Any solution would need to be symmetrical. All security is based on mutual security. You cannot expect us to give Israel security when it's occupying our land, when it's doing daily incursions on our airspace. We do not want this war, and we would be ready to address all the concerns, but our concerns should also be addressed. So it doesn't help to just scapegoat Hezbollah. Things come in a context in this region.
So what's the solution? What's the way forward? What's your proposal for peace?
We have the ingredients for a solution. More than 15 nations, including the UK, US, and others, they laid out this joint statement talking about a ceasefire, a 21-day ceasefire, and then put all the grievances on the table and start addressing them seriously. And that's still our position, except that the moment this joint statement was issued, Netanyahu came to the United Nations General Assembly and rebuffed everything. So it's time to call out and to expose the fallacy of the Israeli narrative about just singling out one side and moving away from the mutual obligations that need to be addressed.
And what about the Iranian influence here? I mean, was Iran right to fire missiles at Israel?
Well, it's not for me to speak about Iran. Obviously, we as a Lebanese government, we want de-escalation in the region, but Israel has been in a provocative mode for years now. And they identified their interest in dragging Iran into the conflict. It's a Pandora box that they opened. The region is already a tinderbox, so I need the best way to address that is through de-escalation.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about context. The context is, of course, tomorrow is October the 7th. A year ago, many, many hostages were taken. You know, children were killed, young women were taken hostage. That's the context for Israel. I mean, that they would say that there are actors in the region that are trying to obliterate it as a state, and that is why they are behaving in the way that they are.
That's a very reductive context because history did not start with October the 7th, and no one condones the horrors committed on October the 7th. But if you go back 1 month before October the 7th, 200 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank. So when you need to address a problem, you address it in its entirety. It doesn't help to just take a snapshot of one single event or one single date of history. As I said, things come in a context, and unless and until you start addressing the whole context, you wouldn't be able to deal with it.
But we've heard this morning from the Shadow Foreign Secretary and also an article in the newspaper by the Prime Minister, both of them making the point that Israel has the right to self-defense, and that although one can agree that there were violations taking place on both sides, that what is happening now is a direct result of that terror attack on Israel, wasn't it, which you yourself have described as horrific. Do you accept that Israel does have the right to self-defense?
Well, self-defense is not an absolute right. International law puts obligations on state on how to exercise the self-defense. Slaughtering 42,000 Palestinians in Gaza is not self-defense. Obliterating residential districts in Beirut, in downtown Beirut or in Beirut suburbs is not self-defense. And then there is a very important element that should be considered here, which is that when you are in an aggressive posture, when you are in an occupation posture, then international law does not give you the right for self-defense.
What
Again, things should be addressed in their
and
entirety.
what is the position of your government on the existence of Israel? Does Israel have a right to exist?
We have laid out with all Arab countries back in 2002 in an Arab summit in Beirut that speaks about the called the Arab Peace Initiative, and we've said that once Israel implements the Security Council resolutions, the pertinent Security Council resolutions, and give Palestinians their sovereign state and withdraws from all Arab occupied territories, then all Arab countries, including Lebanon, would be ready to pursue normal relations with Israel. That's the verbatim text of the Arab Peace Initiative.
And so that means that you think it's correct now for the United States administration, for the British government to say that the only solution is a two-state solution?
Definitely. That's the solution by default. And anyone who challenges that needs to lay out his vision. And there is no
the
other
problem
solution.
is Hezbollah and Hamas don't accept that, do they?
Well, these are symptomatic problems. We need to go back to how things started. These things came that you need to consider the genesis of what led to the present Hezbollah and what led to the present Hamas. When you don't implement law in the streets, people will start taking things in their hands. This is not meant to justify, this is just meant to explain.
But isn't that the fault of the Lebanese government then? I mean, if you're saying that if people are not happy, they'll take it into their own hands, isn't that what governments are designed to do, to stop that from happening?
Well, when we were for 22 years, we were under Israeli occupation. And what became Hezbollah started, the early conception of Hezbollah started with the population and under occupation. And we all understand the complex and difficult geopolitics of the region, but that's how it started, and we need to take that into account.
Just finally, what is your message to Benjamin Netanyahu today? I mean, we're talking in, you've given us the broader context. For the Israelis, the context for them currently is October 7th, is the anniversary. What is your message to Netanyahu today?
I think he should be ashamed of what he's doing, killing civilians, bombing hospitals, putting an embargo over sovereign countries. I think Israel is planting the seeds for its future vulnerabilities. This is not the way to achieve peace in the region. So I think my message is a message of anger and frustration.
What do you mean by planting the seeds for future vulnerabilities?
But because it's increasing the anger, the frustration in the region, and that will not solve the problem. It will just laying the grounds of a future cycle of violence. We don't want that. All Arab countries don't want that. The Lebanese government doesn't want that. We want peace as long as this peace is just and comprehensive in the region.
Can peace happen with Netanyahu in power?
It doesn't look like. He laid out his vision for peace. He showed these two maps in the General Assembly, the evil and the blessing. The blessing for him is a region without a Palestinian state. That's what he refers to as blessing. Then how do you expect that peace could be achieved?